Welcome everyone, I'm Ramses and this is our new masterclass for School Diversity Week, for the first time all learning from home. We have and will be hosting talks with very special guests to celebrate diversity, pride and inclusion. This interactive workshop will be lasting about 25 minutes, with some time for questions at the end. But before we start, this is a video about how to stay safe online while you attend our amazing class.
Hello. We hope you're enjoying loads of interesting activities for School Diversity Week. Millions of young people are a part of this and you must keep safe online. So as part of this, we are moderating and disabling public comments you might make on our social media so we can protect your identities. If you do want to communicate something to us, please just direct message us on our social media platforms, or you can email info@justlikeus.org so we make sure that we're still protecting your identity. Justlikeus.org/betteronline has more information about this and also has some information about where you can go for help or where someone else can go if they need help.
Just Like Us allows us ambassadors to share our stories to thousands of young people in the UK, allowing schools to get in touch with amazing LGBT+ role models. And today's masterclass leader is a master at telling their stories and experiences. They are an amazing performer, writer, poet, and artist whose talent is recognized and celebrated worldwide. In 2016, they became the youngest recipient of the Artist in Residence at Tate Workshop Program, and they've performed at Victoria Albert Museum, at Tate, Grand House, and Barbican, and they were recently won an award for the new theatre show Burgerz. Their debut poetry is Before I Step Outside, You Love Me, which is an anthology about experiences lived outside and on public transport, entirely written outside and created to be read and shared. It's been shipped and praised in over 21 countries and performed in Europe and the US in over 200 venues. I will have to leave out a few of their achievements to avoid running out of time, but please let me introduce Travis Alabanza. How are you, Travis? Glad to have you here today.
So happy
Hi.
to be here. Welcome to this new online room we're in. Are we good to go? I should take it away.
Yeah, just go for it.
Okay, perfect. Hi everyone. I am so excited to be here and I'm so excited to run a workshop from wherever you're watching this. I am totally a fan of running workshops when you're sitting down or also getting up doing the chores, or also you could just use this and put it loud on speaker so it sounds like to your parents that you're doing more work than you actually are. I totally support that as well. Thank you everyone to the ambassadors here that are going to be volunteering and doing this workshop. Can you just give me your silliest wave so I can see that you're there? Great, they're still there. They haven't just frozen the frame as well. As introduced so kindly, I'm Travis Alabanza. I'm an artist and a writer. I do lots of things, but for the purpose of this workshop, I'm going to be focusing on my writing and what I do, because I make plays and I write stories and it's kind of what I do for a living. So I thought, when writing a workshop, what could be my masterclass? Well, I thought about how throughout my career, what I've used is my personal stories and the stories about myself as a young queer LGBT person in this country to kind of talk creatively about issues around that. So the whole process of this workshop today is that we're going to be trying to find ways that we can talk about our own personal journeys in a creative way. Now, I know that that can sometimes be scary, right? It's not just scary to write creatively, full stop, but it's also scary to think about ourselves and to think about the things that we might think about our identities. So hopefully what we're going to do today in the next 20 minutes is just come up with some little exercises that I still use today at my job to be able to help pick apart and write about ideas. You can try this at home, you can pause it, you can come back to it, you can start it again, you can fast forward if you didn't like an activity. These are just some things that I'm going to be doing, and maybe if you like them, they can be useful too. Unfortunately for you ambassadors, you cannot fast forward if you don't enjoy this, and you will also just have to do it as well. To kind of get us rolling, what I wanted to do before we kind of get into more of the kind of detailed stuff is I wanted us to first think about creativity. I feel like it's such a broad word that you can use for so many different things. And I know that so many people are creative, but we're just different in what creativity we have. So what I want us to do is when I say go, we're gonna have 1 minute. And it's really important that you write down every single creative outlet that you can think of. So all the different ways that creativity can happen. And this is really important, that you don't kind of block what you're thinking and you just let and get as many as possible in 1 minute. Ambassadors, can I get like a visual sign that you get the instructions on that one? Great, amazing. So you're going to have 1 minute to write down all the instructions. I'm going to bob along with my head as if I'm in an elevator music. Okay, you have 10 seconds to go. Great, amazing. Let's pull that to a stop. And just in that same rapidness, I'm just going to pick on some people in here to just share back 2 things that they had on their list. Josh, do you mind sharing for me? Cool. Misha, do you mind sharing for me?
I put colours and sounds.
Amazing. Sophie?
I put movement and like physicality.
Cool. Jack?
I put shouting and makeup.
Love that. Rowan?
Videoing and model making. Go with it.
Amazing, love that. And Taz, did you have one?
I put cooking and writing.
Perfect. And you know what? It's almost as if you're a plant, because writing is going to be the one that we're focusing with a bit today, because that's where I kind of sit. But before we do that, we're going to do some more brainstorming. So it's really important that you kind of get a separate piece of paper so that you can see the two like separate maybe. You know, I like to be visual in the fact that this is a different kind of list. And this time instead, I want you to start thinking about you. Now, I want you to think about all the aspects that you can think of that come to your mind about you. Now, this can be personality traits, like if you're like me, you're a bit frazzly as a person, you're very competitive, you're a morning person, but also as a night person, so you just don't really sleep. Or it could be about identities, if you want to go there too. For example, I'm mixed race, I'm Filipino, but I'm also black. I'm queer. I grew up working class. Or it could be things about you that you're proud, like milestones in your life. Like last year, I finally learned how to swim. All of these things. Wow, I just outed myself live that I learned to swim last year, but I'm proud of that. So it can be all of these different things, and it's not dictating where you want to go, but you're going to be spending the next minute doing like you did with the creativity, just as easily flowing some things about yourself. So we're going to start that minute now. Ten seconds. Cool. Amazing. show me with your hands whether like up here or like down here. If it was down here, was that harder or was that easier than the creativity one? Cool, a nice little somewhere in the middle. I like that. I'm always in the middle, to be honest. We don't need a binary of up and down, always in the middle. So now what I want you to do just really quickly is look at that list, and I want you to try and circle 3 or 4 things that feel interesting to you. Now that is really important before you circle to really think about that, because I think sometimes when we speak about ourselves, we're so used to writing the things that we think people want to know about ourselves. But actually for me, last summer, the most important identity I had was learning how to swim. And actually, if I was to make a show last summer, which I didn't, I was too busy touring one, but if I did, I would have made one about that show, about learning to swim, because that's what was most interesting. So I really want you to just take a second and circle 3 things that are most interesting to you on that list, not someone else, but to you. And then when you've shown me, when you've done that, just kind of like raise your hand in the screen so I can see we're all done. Thanks so much. Oh, amazing. Now this is totally, I'm going to leave this to you because it's obviously something you've written and it's okay that it doesn't want to be written out, but is there anyone that wants to put up their hand and share one of those things that was interesting that they had? No pressure at all. We can move on if not. Yes, I'm so sorry, I've forgotten how to pronounce your name. Romano?
Yeah, you got that right. For me personally, I've put Papa or Big Bro Friend, because if I ever find out a friend's in need, instantly, like, what can I do?
Nice, amazing. And was that something that you thought initially would come up as the most interesting to you?
No.
Oh, cool. What changed in the process?
Well, I put down some of the kind of stuff that everybody would say, but then I actually had a thought, and personally I think that part of me is quite important to myself. Yeah. So
nice, amazing. Thanks, Romano. Does anyone else want to share? See everyone's screens. Maybe jump in if... Oh, Rowan?
I'd put walking back into a school as part of Just Like Us, but walking back into a school, it's school was a tough time for me, shall we say. And so actually being able to walk back through the doors of a school in my local area was actually a big achievement.
Thank you, Rowan. Thanks so much for sharing that. I've got time for one more if anyone else wants to share. It's okay if not. Cool. Oh, yeah. Ramsey? You're on mute, I think.
So I put confident because it's a part of my personality that I didn't really know that I had, and now it's borderline bossy. And it's just been like a big achievement, because the more I grew up and I felt like I was gaining control over my life, the more I felt confident to be, myself. And I used to be very, very introvert as a kid. And this has been like such a huge change for me that sometimes I'm still surprised by it. Like if you were to tell me 10 years ago that would be, helping facilitating the masterclass, I honestly wouldn't believe that. Or any public speaking, to be fair. So it's just been like a huge achievement. It's now such a huge part of my personality.
Yes, amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. What I love about all 3 examples, and so if you're watching this at home, what's a really good way to think about is that they were all really specific. And I think sometimes when we're talking about ourselves, we can go really general. But if you use that chip to try and think about what you actually want to talk about, then sometimes they can become more specific. So my first tip that I'd write down is that when you are writing about yourself and using you as the source, be specific and be excited by yourself. We don't need to talk about the things that we think they want us to talk about. Instead, we need to talk about the things that we want to talk about. And sometimes that's the same thing, and sometimes that can be separate. So we're going to move on to the next task now. When you're making a show or a creative piece of writing or a book, often people will talk about tension. There needs to be something tense in the work, a conflict, something to get over in order for the reader, the audience, or the person, even in a painting, to be interested in. If we are coming as a full package, ready, already decided, often the audience can feel a bit left, like, well, what is there to work out? Now, when yourself is the source, finding tension can be quite a delicate thing. It can be quite scary because you're going to have to start to relate to yourself in a different way. Now, I know there are many ways that we mentioned you could get creative. I loved that there was video gaming. I loved that there was movement. But for this particularly, I'm going to be looking at stories. So with this, I want us to listen carefully, and I want you to know that when I'm about to ask you to do this next task, you will not need to share out what this thing you're thinking out is. In fact, we won't even be asked. It's going to be used for another activity. But I want us to try and write down something that to us is private, that we will not share, that is about ourselves. Maybe it's something you've done that you don't want anyone to know. Or maybe it's something about who you are that you don't want anyone to know. It could be anything, big or small. And I want you to give yourself a minute to think about what that is and write it down in whatever way you feel comfortable. Maybe it's just a code so that you know what it is. But the most important part of this exercise is after you've thought about that, underneath you're going to label it the secret. So once you've figured out what the secret is, come back to me and show that you're ready. I'm going to give us hopefully a minute for this, but have a little think. Amazing. So just to reiterate, if you're watching everyone work at home, you are trying to come up with your secret. And you're not going to name it to anyone else. It's just for you and your page. You can rip it up after. But the whole point is that you're finding something that you can clearly visualize that you're labeling the secret. Show me some hands if you're done. I give like 25 more seconds. Because I'm running activities. The good thing about if you're watching this at home and if I'm too quick, you can actually just pause me, but make sure that you pause me in this position so that it's on my good side. Thank you. Okay, cool. We're going to wrap that up. Now, you must all have, hopefully now, something written on your page that says the secret. Now, when I'm making a show, there's normally a secret that I'm trying to work out. There's something that I'm trying to figure out about myself, but it can be quite raw. And I think sometimes what stopped me from thinking that I could use myself as the source for creativity was that I wasn't ready to share all those secrets. And that makes total sense. Secrets are scary. The page is scary. The stage is even scarier for me. But what we can do when we're thinking about secrets is that we can use things to talk about it or hide behind or to make it more fun or to illustrate it. So I'm kind of asking the question of what would protect you from the scariness of telling the secret. Let me give you an example. In my show Burgerz that was on tour last year, the secret I was trying to talk about was that a burger was thrown at me in public in an attack that was quite sad for me and hard to manage and deal with. But I didn't want to come up on stage and talk about that attack. So instead, what I hid behind was I'm going to talk about this secret whilst I cook a burger on stage with a live audience member. So all the distractions that happened was that it turned into a cooking show as a way for me to discuss the secret that I was afraid to talk about. So I want you to imagine that you're dreaming as big as possible, and I want you to label the secret and think about how you would tell that secret. Now, you never need to mention what the secret is to us. You're kind of building a sentence saying, like, I imagine telling my secret whilst a huge orchestra is on stage doing a violin version of Crazy Frog as waves go over the stage. Whatever it might be. Or you could say, I want to tell my secret whilst the whole room behind me is on fire and it slowly burns down as I'm telling my secret. We don't need to know what your secret is. What's the most important bit of this task is that we're getting the visions that you're parading behind your secret. Maybe it has something to do with your secret, maybe it doesn't. It's about whatever will protect you to tell that secret. I feel like I said secret a lot of times. Can I just get some visual response from people? Do they need any clarifying points, or we're all good? Great. Amazing. So just have a minute and a half to dream big about that secret. So if you're working on this at home and you're struggling to come up with an idea, I can give you another example of shows I've done. I wanted to talk about the secret of feeling lonely in a show. So in order for me to talk about that secret of feeling lonely, I came up with an idea where all the lights would be turned off in the show and we would all be sat in the dark together whilst I tell the secret. So try and think of creative ways, and that helped me become less nervous about sharing the secret. So be as simple or as big as you want. And don't think about budget, because the theatre industry is in to be confirmed at the moment anyway. Cool. How are we doing for time, everyone? How's people good? I see Josh is like nodding. Siraj, do you want to hit? Okay. So I was going to ask if people want to share their ideas. They don't have to share what the secret is. Obviously, you just say the secret is told by. Siraj, do you feel comfortable kicking us off with that?
Sure, yeah. So my secret would be shouted down at people through a megaphone from a hot air balloon.
Amazing. Thanks so much.
Potentially with a fire at the same time, so they can't actually hear me. I'm not sure about that bit.
Awesome. I love it. Thanks so much. Does anyone else? Josh?
So mine, my secret is going to be told. Basically, it's going to be a mirror maze, and I'm going to be in the middle of the mirror maze, and I'll be telling my story, and the audience have to find their way around the mirror maze until they reach me in the middle, where there will be this lavish banquet.
We love a lavish banquet. Thank you, Josh. Does anyone else want to share theirs? Jack?
So I don't actually want to tell my secret. So if I tell my secret, it's going to have to be in a like completely dark room, and there will be a spotlight, but it's going to be on an empty chair, so it's like nobody else is there.
Oh, I love that, Jack. Yes. Okay, Romano's waving around. Yes, Romano, last one.
I want to tell my secret by starting a little campfire, like somewhere like really, really peaceful. You know, just like by a lake or something. But what I'm using to keep the fire going is photos.
Really nice image. That's really strong, Romano. Those are really beautiful images. Does anyone that didn't share their secret want to maybe talk about, rather than what their idea was, what the process was like doing that? Did it help you think about your secret? What was that like writing that? Anyone want to? Yeah, Misha?
So I think too deeply about everything, so I didn't manage to come up with anything in a minute. But I think the process for me was hard because I was trying to think of why it was a secret, and then how that would influence how it would be told. So yeah, that was my process.
Yeah, well, that's important. And I think what's great is that these kind of activities, maybe some of us, we can do it on the spot, but actually what anyone making a show or making a creative piece would probably spend a day fleshing out all that secret is, you know. Does anyone else want to share quickly what the process is like for them? Yeah, Sophie.
I was trying to link it to the words that I used to describe myself, to try and think about what bit of my personality it reflected, which it's quite effective.
Nice, amazing. So we're going to do one last activity now, and I just want to say thanks so much for doing it so far. These are really meant to be fleshed out a lot more, but what I wanted to do was rather give us these little tips that we can do at home and kind of a crash course, but all of these could really be elongated. You could really, how I always tell people when building creativity is, when you've got that secret and that story, what you would then do is find the secret inside that secret and do the process again and again and again. And what that creates is then when it finally gets to your story, there's so much rich things underneath because you've done that work to build underneath that. For this last bit, what I want us to do is to think about symbolism. Does anyone kind of know what symbolism might mean in this context? Yeah, Romano.
Well, an example that I kind of thought possibly you could have put forward is when you were cooking that burger on stage. Through cooking it and all that, it was almost like burning down that hate of the past to spread the message of the future.
Romano, thanks so much, because you've just reminded me that I can use my own work as an example. So yeah, that is so true. Let's look at Burgerz and look at the three kind of words I want us to think about. So we're going to be thinking about symbolism, which, as Romano said, it's when something kind of resembles something else in a show. So you're using something to resemble something else. So for me, that burger burning was exactly that. I wanted to burn away all of this hate and stuff because we let the burger burn in the cooking show. But I also want us to think about metaphor. So metaphor is when, you're using something to describe something else. So something becomes the meaning of what it is. I'm sure there's a better definition as a school teacher. So I'm going to say pause, you look up the definition. I'm not an English teacher, but metaphor is when you'd use something. So for example, with Burgerz, I only know how to do it with burgers, I created some lines where the burger became my conversation around gender. So the meat became about body parts, and the burger bun and the hot dog resembled male and female. And I started to create this image of a burger that was actually meant to be talking about gender. And so what that meant is that I could talk about one thing to actually talk about the other. I want to reiterate that talking about ourselves is tough. It can be really hard and scary to bear all of ourselves in our work. But I want to remind us that we have loads of tricks and tasks to actually hide behind things. And I say the word hide, but that suggests that it's negative. I actually think that sometimes being creative is about coming up with skillful ways to talk about ourselves that are more interesting, That yes, we can go and bear all, but actually how do we protect ourselves, but also entice the audience, the reader, the viewer, to see something else within that too? And artists have been doing this forever, right? Suddenly the blue sea becomes a well-known depiction of depression and feeling sad. There's so many times where parables in the Bible have been used to suggest other meanings deeper than that. Consistently throughout time, we have used ways to talk about something else when describing one thing. And we can do that with ourselves. So for this last task, what I want us to try and think of is something that we want to express about who we are feeling, who we are. Maybe it's one of your identities, but try and use symbolism, metaphor, or another story to discuss it. For example, if I want to write about being afraid of my own dreams, I might want to instead talk about a snail that wishes that they could be fast. Or maybe I'm trying to put my feelings about being proud of coming out to my parents, so instead I'm going to talk about how the sun feels when it comes out each day. These are just some examples I'm thinking of on the spot, but it's you. You're personal, be inventive, personify them, use escapism. I'm not looking for us right now to write the thing if we don't want to, but actually now you could just plot an idea for something that you might come to in the future. Can I just see from ambassadors for this last task, you've all been amazing. Does that instructions make sense? Does anyone need some clarification? No, amazing. So you're going to either try writing if you want to, or just coming up with an idea for something to show. And I'm going to give us like 3 or 4 minutes to do that. Thank you. So if you're trying to do this at home and you feel stuck or short of ideas, remember that so many artists and creatives look at other stories in the past for examples. So think of your own stories that you've been told when you were younger, maybe fairy tales, maybe nursery rhymes that had other meanings behind them, and you can use them for examples or things like that. Okay, ambassadors, I know you probably want more time, but I'm looking at my time and realizing that timekeeping is not one of my skills or identities that I own or possess. So just to close it off, because I really want to hear someone's, does anyone have something that they want to share that they came up with as an idea? Romano.
This came into my head like halfway through you explaining this, and I just had to get it down. I'm like really excited about this one.
Yay.
I finally came out of the closet, finally secure in my knowledge of who I am and what I'm wearing, to find people trying to shut the bedroom door. Unbeknownst to them, the door is not the only way out from where they want me to be.
Yes, nice. Romano, that's a great start of something, because I've got all these questions like, wait, what is the door? Is there a tunnel? What is it going to happen? Are you like...
I want to say a disclaimer though, since this is going out to schools. Nobody try climbing out of your bedroom windows, please.
Thanks, Romano. Yeah, definitely. I'm super excited about that, and I'm so glad you're excited. This is how you should be. Romano, it's almost as if you knew the kind of reaction I was wanting. Excitement is so important. When we're talking about ourselves, if you don't feel a strong emotion, park it and go on. I really don't think that there's a pressure to talk about things. Romano was excited to talking about coming out or other doors, and that's great. And that was what's important. But don't feel like just because you are something, you have to talk about it. Finding that excitement is so key. Do we have one more person before we shut off the event? Yeah, Sophie.
So I was also thinking about sexuality, but I got kind of thinking about it because you're talking about swimming. I'm really into wild swimming. So like the way it would be like revealed would be like kind of different levels of water and like being above the surface, under the surface, and like the plants that are in different parts of like a pond that represents that, I don't know, like being pansexual and all the different things, places you feel comfortable. Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
I love it. And
Thank you.
I actually have just been writing about, I've been using plants to write about some other emotions that I've been having. It's such rich imagery, and you can go into so many different things because different plants require different things to grow. Plants require sunlight or attention or all these different things. So you could start building the world of plants to link back to yours as well. So I love it. Great. I wish I could hear all of yours, but hopefully at home, hearing a couple people's examples have helped. I just want to say that these have been a short few activities. And as always, when you're finding your creative voice, it's about what works for you. Sometimes doing an activity and realizing that it didn't work is just as important as finding one that does work, because you're just trying to find what helps for you. 6 years on into making shows, scripts, writing plays, I'm still using these tasks as a way to find myself and find what I'm genuinely excited about. But the one thing I would say that stops me the most when doing these tasks is judgment. And hopefully the pace of today and the quickness of today reminds you that to get to this point, what you have to let go of is that judgmental self of your ideas. Your ideas are worth being on paper. Your stories are worth being told. We need more of your stories to be told. And so I'm really excited to hear and hopefully find out about all the stories you're telling. Thanks so much, and see you in an online space soon, probably. Destiny, done?
Yeah, so is it on? Yeah. So we're going to open the Q&A, if that's fine, and thank you for giving us homework. I'm going to spend probably a few days just going through the notes and writing stuff. This has been like so inspirational. It was really, really amazing. So thank you for that. It really made us think a lot about ourselves and how we tell our stories and also to other people. And what you mentioned about sharing something you're enthusiastic about, I think really relates to what we do as ambassadors as well. And the fact that when we go into schools, like for a lot of us, it's actually a quite odd experience because you go back to a place that isn't necessarily a happy place for you. But the idea that you can go in there and you can, change someone else's life by sharing your own experience, I'm really happy to share who you are and to put that on display in a sense. So our first question is from Taz.
Hi Travis.
Hi.
I really enjoyed that. I want to know more about your identity. You're one of a few quite prominent non-binary people that are around. How did you know that you were non-binary?
Yeah, I think that's such a good question, because I think sometimes when we look at people online or we're following people or we're reading their articles, we assume that they just magically found out all these words and ways to talk about themselves. But I think for me, it was never one moment. I think for me, it was many moments of feeling uncomfortable, many moments of feeling scared and tense. And I think for me, how I found I was non-binary, to use lack of a word for what there could be, is that I just realized I was always tense when gender was being spoken about. My body would tense up when people would talk about me being a man, but also my body would tense up when I imagined the other idea that people had told me that there was. And then it wasn't until I was 19 that I went to a queer kind of organizing place where there was lots of queer people, and we were doing a pronoun circle, and this was a bit before pronoun circles became the thing that everyone was doing, and someone said, and my pronouns are them, they. And I went, what? And I was like, that can't happen. And someone was like, yeah, that is happening. And I was rude. I was rude back. I said, no, I don't understand. I don't get it. And I did all these things. And then they were patient with me, which they didn't need to be. They explained. And 2 weeks after spending time with them, I turned around and I went, I think I'm maybe that too. That makes me feel good. And they were like, I had a feeling. That's why I gave you the patience. So I think what I think about that is that it takes time. It's trial and error. But we're allowed to have trial and error. I think there's such a pressure on us to know exactly everything about ourselves. and know every word and every way, but we are constantly changing. We're constantly finding new parts of ourselves, and non-binary was just one that released tension. My shoulders dropped, and it wouldn't have to be this big thing. It was like, okay, I don't feel as tense. I deserve not to feel as tense, so this must work.
I really like the point you said about, not deserving to feel tense, because sometimes we have, this huge pressure that others put on us or we put on ourselves about finding out our identities. And that sometimes, we forget that, we deserve feel happy, to feel relieved, and to just be able to, to be, whether that's, with labels or without. And I think that's a really powerful message to give to people listening to us today. Our second question is from Ron.
Yes, hello. What do I say to people that say drama isn't as important as other subjects?
I mean, it depends if you want the PG version or not, Rowan. I think, for me, I have I have lots of, well, not regrets. I have lots of things that I would change going back to school. And I listened to people's opinions that told me that I should put the most importance on maths and science and these subjects. And I really listened to that. I thought that meant that arts would only ever be something I do on the side. Now, although I believe it's important to be holistic in our education, because I put so much of my art on the side for ages, it meant that I didn't get formal training. I didn't go and have an enjoyable experience at drama school. I never did those things because I thought it was always something on the side. I mean, now it's my job. It's what I do for a living, and I enjoy my job. And I think the question I would always say back to people when they say these kind of things is the purpose of life an imagination of achievement, or is it actually about enjoyment? And I would say that actually achievement isn't achievement if you are not enjoying something. I think that actually what we're striving for is to enjoy the things that we do. And so if drama is something you enjoy more than maths and science, then that is something that should be important to you, because your enjoyment is important. Does that mean that I think you shouldn't try hard at maths? No. Does that not mean that actually if you become an artist, maths is going to be quite handy for all those taxes? Yes. But I do think that actually learning about drama gave me a space where, some people hate drama, that's fine. But for me, it was the first place wherever I was celebrated for the things that I felt like I was being punished for outside of the room. Suddenly my femininity, suddenly my campness, suddenly all my expressions were a plus and getting me good grades. Whereas outside the drama room, I was being called names for it. So for me, it's simple. If you enjoy it, you don't need to justify it to anyone, do it. But schools should definitely look at that and go, well, we should be putting money for drama into it. But that's a different story for another day. You don't have to worry about that at home.
And I think that, that's very important. Like you mentioned, that sometimes some spaces welcome us and others don't. And sometimes it's all about not only, finding what you like and what you enjoy, but also finding out, what makes you feel safe and welcome, and sort of like pursuing that as well. Like, of course, you need to have a passion for what you're doing, because otherwise you're probably never going to be able to enjoy what you're doing. But at the same time, it's perfectly fine and valid to, dismiss something if it doesn't make you feel safe or if it makes you feel threatened or under pressure. And I think it's great to be able to, to explore a lot of different, interests and passions until you find something that's really you and that allows you to be yourself in that sense, which can be math as well. But of course, it can also be drama. Okay, so we've got a question from Jack.
Hi, Travis. I was just wondering, what's your favourite piece that you've written?
Oh my God. And do you know what? It's so hard because I'm so like, when people see the work, often that means I've written it actually a year before that work. So it's always so interesting because there's different stages to the work. Like me writing Burgerz as a script, I actually don't think it was my favourite script. But suddenly, obviously, because of the experience of doing it on stage so many times, touring the world with it, all this thing, it's hard not to say Burgerz because it changed my life, and it's meant that I am able to make more shows. It's meant that I'm able to write now, you know, and I think for me it has to be Burgerz because the message of that show around trans, hate crime and gender non-conforming people came out at a time where the world wasn't, I mean, it still isn't, but the world was heating up in aggression towards us. And for me to do that show in front of thousands of people in Brazil, Berlin, touring across Europe, Edinburgh Fringe, alongside the media telling us that we can't exist, meant that for me, Burgerz has to be my favourite so far because the experience was just so affirming. And to have trans people come and watch the show and see it sell out and see it do that meant that I felt really proud of us as a community. So it has to be Burgerz. And there's lots of projects now that I'm writing and falling in love with that maybe in 2 years when they're out and about in the world, I can say them too. But I think Burgerz, yeah.
We're going to have to call you back in 2 years then, just to see.
Exactly.
Hopefully it's going to be live and not via Zoom, but
I hope so too.
fingers crossed. So the next question is from Romano.
Hi, my question is, how do you stay so confident in your work and in yourself?
Well, I'll be really honest with you. I'm not always confident or in my work or in myself. And I think it's so important to hear that, is that we're often meeting people, we're meeting certain parts of someone, you know, and we're meeting not always the things, you don't see the things that are happening off screen here. You don't see the other things because we're building assumptions off of what we see from someone's stage persona or online or all these things. But I would say that I am proud of myself. I would say that actually that I don't have shame around who I am. I don't have, and I didn't always have that. And I would say what I did was, for me, I'm a history nerd. So for me, learning about other people that were like me, other people that have lived like me, other people that existed, learning that I actually am not new, that I'm unique because I'm me, we're all unique, but actually these identities that can make me feel like I'm the only one. There's been so many people before me for thousands of years. For me, that was a big turning point to have confidence because I was like, okay, if gender non-conforming people have existed then and managed to do this and contributed to this and this and this, then I think I can do this now too. And for me, whenever I feel not confident, which, you know, is more often than not, actually, like I think there's not lots of people in the arts and in these industries and galleries that were from a council estate that didn't speak how they speak, that had a bit of this about them. So it's a lot of the time I can start to feel not good enough. I just remember that we've always been here, we've always been doing it. But I also remember that so much of power is about convincing us whose stories can be told, right? We get to see certain stories and not others. But actually that means that there's so much power in our stories because they haven't been heard as much. So actually that gives me the confidence to say, not only am I deserving to be here, but they're lucky that I am even here as well. So really shifting that, rather than saying, thank you so much for having me, saying, thank you so much for having me, yes, 50%, but also, you're welcome. Really shifting that helped me as well, yeah.
I think that this also like goes back to what you mentioned when you answer how you figure out that you are non-binary and, you know, that person educating you. Sometimes we see, you know, all these role models and all these people going public about their identities, and we sort of expect that, you know, everyone who's, you know, transgender or non-binary or LGBT+ needs to be like that, like needs to be, you know, ready to educate, to put themselves in the spotlight. And sometimes it can be, you know, intimidating when you're figuring out who you are, and maybe you're still not sure, you're still questioning, but you've got this pressure of, you know, coming out or, you know, explaining to other people your identity. But it's perfectly fine to know that, you know, not all people are like that. You know, of course, we're glad to have these people because these sort of like do the job for us in a sense. Like, you know, if we're uncomfortable answering something, we can just say, oh, why don't you watch this? Why don't you drink that? And we can just, you know, put it away. But at the same time, there is a pleasure. And, you know, I think that, of course, I can only talk, you know, as an ambassador and as a writer, but when we talk about our experiences, we know that we're going to do that, so we've got time and space to prepare. And it's not the same as, being put in the spotlight, in a classroom or in the streets. And I think you talk about this like a lot in your anthology as well.
Yeah, I think just to jump, I know that we're probably time and everything, but I think that's such an important point to say that actually we are all still questioning things. It would be unusual if we had ourselves figured out. And I think that the gaze of the media, the ways that the eyes look on us, make us think that we have to know everything about ourselves in order to be real. And actually, I think that the most realist thing is to say, I think this is about myself, but I'm open to not knowing. And I think that it's important that we know that the role models we're seeing or the people we're seeing in public light got so many questions about themselves still too. And we're allowed to, and we should. I hope you do. I hope you have questions about yourself.
So the next question is from Sophie. That's the last one.
Hi, thank you so much for that workshop. It was so good. I learned so much. So my question is, what is the impact of performance and storytelling for the LGBT plus community?
God, these are good questions. These are better than when the interviewers do, the people that get paid to interview do it. So thanks. Great questions. I'm going to be coming back to everyone to interview me from now on. And I'm still thinking about your imagery of swimming and sexuality. It's like really, really strong in my head.
Thank you.
The relationship between performance and LGBT, well, we've got a history of contributing to the arts. It's so funny that people are talking about we need queer art, and we really do, but also we've been defining art for history and years. You look at music, pop culture, fashion, drag, all these things, queer people were behind so much of the trends. We really do create the trends. And this is what I try and talk about. For all the ways that they make LGBTQ people think that we're wrong, I want us to remind ourselves of all the ways that we have made their language, their fashion, their aesthetic, their music possible. Behind so many straight artistic people are queer people that influenced them or helped work with them. Behind so many models on the red carpet, behind so many movie stars, is a creative team of LGBTQ people that have helped them look the way they do or came up with the inspiration. So our relationship to art is always there. I would say that for me as an LGBTQ person, I can only speak as myself, is that performance allows us to reshift dynamics that we can't have in real life. So in real life, I walk outside and I could feel scared of being shouted at or harassed or this, but on stage I'm allowed to unlock a power that I can't have in the streets. So I think that performance allows us to have fantasy, but a fantasy that is rooted in a future that we want to have. I want a future where trans and gender non-conforming people can dance openly on the streets, so I can make a performance and a script where I can see that. I think that that's what's so important about learning to write our own stories, is that we can write the stories for, this is so corny, but I mean it, for the future that we want to imagine. And I think LGBTQ people have always been doing that. I would say to people that are watching this that might be LGBTQ or questioning or wondering, is to really start to research artists and music of people that you like that are LGBTQ, because what you will learn is that we make really good art. Yeah. Thanks, Sophie.
Thank you.
We do make really good art. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to end this incredible masterclass, which is really a shame because I'm sure we could have gone on like 4 hours after this. But thank you so much for your time. We're also approaching the end of our Diversity Week, but you can still find out more information on the website, justlikeus.org, or our Facebook page, Just Like Us UK. And if you'd like to follow Travis and their work, you can visit their website, travisalabanza.co.uk, find info about upcoming events as well. And if you'd like more resources about how to stay safe online and at home, or need any support at all, you can also visit the Better Online page on our website. So thank you again so much for doing that today, and hope you have an amazing end of the School Diversity Week.